What is up and what is good people? I am Jeff Lightsy Jr. here with the Black Balls channel and Victory Formation. Be sure to hit the thumbs up button, like, share, subscribe, and the notification bell and all that good stuff. Wow. What this means, this huge landscaping changing landmark changing decision that took place in the NCAA recently involving the ACC, the Big Ten, and the Pac-12. They have come to a formal agreement, a historic alliance is what they're calling it. 41 schools have teamed together to make sure that they don't get plucked by the SEC, and to also kind of assures us that the Big 12 is going to dissolve. I'm going to get into it. So I'm going to share my screen and show you the decision that was released, this press release that was sent out by the Big Ten, including the ACC, the Big Ten, and the Pac-12. Let's see. It says the ACC, Big Ten, and Pac-12 announced historic alliance. 41 world-class institutions across 3 Autonomy 5 conferences to collaborate on the future evolution of college athletics and inter-college scheduling alliance. So this is huge. Why is this so huge? Because now we are going to see these conferences cross and mix. You could see a Clemson versus an Ohio State during a regular season game. You could see a Louisville versus a Michigan in basketball during the regular season more than once, because past all of this, one of the biggest things is the scheduling. The alliance includes a scheduling component for football, women's and men's basketball, designed to create new intercollegiate games, conference games, enhance opportunities for student athletes, and to optimize the college athletics experience for both student athletes and fans across the country. Why is this big? Because once again, everybody's trying to play catch up. Everybody is trying to keep the SEC off their heels, right? To keep, look at those schools at the top of the Big Ten, right? In the Illinois, Indiana, Maryland, Michigan. Obviously, Ohio State and Michigan are the 2 big cats as far as when it comes to the moneymaker in football. But we know in like basketball, Purdue puts up really good teams. Wisconsin has a really good football program and puts together really good teams. Iowa puts a lot of guys into the NFL. Indiana will be a really good football program this year, and they hope to come back to life with their new head coach over on the basketball end. But this, like I said, leaves one conference out as a sitting duck, and I think it's going to have that conference eventually be dissolved. And that's the Big 12, because, you know, we saw that these conferences were coming together and making alliances after what took place with Texas and Oklahoma. Texas and Oklahoma were the biggest schools in the Big 12 in the history of the Big 12. They were original members of the Big 12 back when it was the Big 8, and they got plucked by the SEC. And it was all due to money, right? The SEC, with Texas and Oklahoma joining, will now make over $1 billion a year. Their annual revenue will surpass $1 billion. It will go from 725 million roughly to 1.3 billion. Like that was an opportunity Texas and Oklahoma, as universities and as institutions, as well as athletically, felt like they couldn't pass up. Right. So you can't be mad at them. But what it did was it left the Big 12 out to dry. Right. The Kansases, the Kansas States, the Iowa States. And now those schools are kind of left in limbo. Right. And so what the ACC, the Pac-12, and the Big Ten decided was like, hey, we don't want to end up like the Big 12. You know, we have our networks. We have cable contracts with ESPN or whoever, and we want to make sure that this stays afloat. We don't want to end up like them sitting high and dry. And also, we want to potentially take some of the schools from that conference. We want to potentially get in on what the SEC did. Let's look at the Big 12 conference, and let's see some of the schools that could potentially get plucked by the 3 conferences that just made this alignment. So I'm going to share my screen and just talk about what would make sense. Think about this. Leave your thoughts in the chat. So no, not this. Let's see. Because like I said, these 3 conferences, it's all, let's be honest, guys. All of this is about making money. Right. So here are your Big 12 schools. We know Oklahoma's gone. They're SEC now. They'll be SEC within the next year or 2. Oklahoma State Baylor's up for grabs. Baylor are the reigning NCAA champions. Texas Tech has a really good basketball program. The Iowa State, which has a really good football program, has been pretty good the last couple of years. Oklahoma's put a lot of guys in the NBA. Buddy Hield, Trae Young, etc. Oh, no, Oklahoma's going to SEC. I'm stupid. My bad. West Virginia, a former ACC conference member, now they could potentially be back on the chopping block. TCU, which has historically been a really good football program. So like you have some really, really good, and Kansas is the end all be all, especially when it comes to college basketball, which I know a conference out there would love to have Kansas come be a part of their conference, specifically the Pac-12, because the Pac-12 has been doing really, really good as far as basketball goes. USC and UCLA both made it to the Elite Eight. UCLA actually made it to the Final Four. And we see top-ranked recruits from California staying out in California, going at SC, going to choosing UCLA. If they could snatch up a Kansas and put them in the Pac-12, that would give them even more national relevance than they already have. And so this is historic. This is going to be crazy. It is going to be a free-for-all when it comes to college sports, because now I just don't. Like I said, I think the Big 12 is done. Those schools that I just talked about, we could go ahead and divvy them up and see what conference we think they fit best with. I think Iowa State ends up in the Big 10. I think Baylor ends up in the Big 10. I think Texas Tech ends up in the Big 10. I could see, like I said, I could see West Virginia back in the ACC. TCU, get all the Texas schools in the Big 10, potentially a couple over in the Pac-12. Potentially Oklahoma State there as well. Kansas State is another team I haven't mentioned. They're going to probably end up in the Pac-12. It is going to be a free-for-all. It's literally going to be a free-for-all after this announcement. What's also really cool, like I said, is the scheduling and the cross-scheduling that's going to take place between the Big 10, the Pac-12, and the ACC. So for like myself, I'm a Louisville fan, right? So I would love to see Louisville take on one of the teams that we used to run into all the time in the tournament was Michigan State. I love to see cross games both in football and basketball against Michigan State, because that's not a real rivalry, but it's kind of like a pseudo rivalry we used to have when Rick Pitino was there. And to see them take on Michigan State, we beat Michigan in basketball in a championship game. To see, Juwan Howard and his team go against Chris Mack and his team, I would love to see something like that. Or to travel out to LA and take on a UCLA, to take on a USC, both on the gridiron and in the basketball court, have those teams come to Louisville, Kentucky. Like that's going to be exciting. And I think that's going to bring a level of excitement that's been missing from college football, because one of the things about college football, if you're not a fan of an SEC team, you kind of feel left out, right? You kind of feel like it's the SEC and then there's everybody else. And especially with Texas and Oklahoma moving over to the SEC, you want a chance for your program to stay relevant. You want a chance for your program to feel relevant. And especially with the expanding of the playoff, having these teams go against each other, having this 3-conference alignment, and seeing teams that you would normally never see play each other, I think is going to only bode well when it comes to the playoff. And then when you talk about college basketball, it's only going to strengthen your non-conference or whatever, even if they're calling this non-conference anymore, your non-conference schedule for an NCAA tournament bid, right? If you're a bubble team, like, I don't know, let's pick a random team, Illinois, right? And you get a chance to play Louisville, or you get a chance to play Duke or North Carolina on the basketball court during the regular season. You get big time upsets over one or both or all three, right? That's going to only strengthen not only your chance. We know by that point, you're probably going to make the tournament, but it's also going to boost your seeding. Like, all of this is super exciting moving forward. But what it also, and the biggest excitement for me, what this does is that I think it's going to finally eliminate the NCAA. The NCAA has been taking advantage of student athletes for years, right? And now the conferences are seeing, and the individual schools and the individual conferences are seeing, like, yo, we can govern ourselves, right? If we come together as an alliance, right? The three conference alliance, I think the Big 12 is done. They'll end up going, and maybe some of them even join the SEC. But we come together, as in the individual conferences with our individual commissioners or whoever. We don't. What purpose do we need the NCAA for? All the NCAA ever did. Let's be honest. Leave your thoughts in the chat. Leave your thoughts in the comments. All the NCAA ever did was hand out punishment. Tell you what you couldn't do. They didn't run anything. Like, especially during COVID, we really saw that the NCAA wasn't worth a quarter during COVID because they never gave any guidance on how to handle certain situations. There wasn't a standard across the board. Every conference did their own thing individually. We had conferences canceling the season before it ever started. We had conferences, the Big Ten Conference said we're not going to play football and had to be convinced by its own players who wanted to play to actually have a season. So that's why they only played like 4 or 5 games. So you had teams in the college football playoff, Ohio State being one, played like 5 or 6 games, and some teams like Alabama played 12. Like that's stupid. All the NCAA ever did was hand out punishments. Tell guys they weren't eligible because they took money from here, or their mama's bills got paid then, or their daddy took this, or did whatever, or you ate a fish sandwich that you was given to at the cookout by your uncle, and that's illegal because your uncle isn't your legal guardian or whatever, right? Like, it's literally all they did, right? And there's no BS. That's literally every single thing that they did. Hell, Chase Young had to miss games or whatever because his, friend of a family paid for him, his girlfriend, to go to his game, right? He paid him to make sure his girlfriend came to the Rose Bowl. So they're not worth a quarter. We can finally get rid of that. Like I said, all they ever did was give out punishment and make sure players couldn't get paid, right? It's literally all they ever did. I forgot, I left that part out. They always made sure the players could not get paid. Well, now that's out the window because we see these guys signing these NIL deals out the wazoo, getting millions. I mean, there's been millions of dollars exchanged from, corporations to players, which it should have always been like that. It should have never, like literally there was never a good reason. Their whole, we want to keep their amateurism, man, bull crap, because they make hundreds of millions of dollars, if not billions of dollars every single year for said institutions. They're not amateurs when they're doing that. They weren't amateurs when, the University of Texas can build a brand new locker room, or the University of Louisville can spend $50 million to upgrade facilities or whatever. That don't sound like an amateur to me. So that was always BS. And so now that that's out the window, what do I need you for? If somebody, it's going to be very, very hard to violate stuff, right? Now that the players can get paid, it's going to be very, very hard to break the rules because there's honestly no rules when it comes to NIL stuff as far as I've seen. I haven't seen anybody get in trouble for it yet because there's not really a standard, right? Because the NCAA sucks. They didn't do that. They didn't create a standard or get ahead of this. They try to fight it tooth and nail for so long. They never got ahead of it. So there's not a standard there. And so now there's no need for the NCAA. As an organization, we're still going to have our college sports because so many people go to different universities and so many people go to different colleges. They're always going to love their alma mater or have their favorite team or wherever they grew up or whatever, right? There's always going to be alliances to certain schools. So we're never going to stop supporting the schools. We're never going to stop supporting what they do. It just didn't make sense for them not to get paid for their services, not to be able to make a dollar off their name. Oh, because you wear a jersey and you play for Michigan, you don't get to, what? Okay, take Michigan off. I'm still me, right? take the name off or whatever. I'm still Reggie Bush or whatever. I'm still Tim Tebow. I'm still whoever. Those guys would have made millions in college football. Would have made millions while they were in college. Reggie Bush, Tim Tebow, Johnny Manziel, Lamar Jackson. These guys would have made millions, literally millions. Hell, the guy, Bryce Young from Alabama, hasn't even started a game, and he's made over $1 million in NIL deals. So, yes, this alliance is exciting for me, man. As a fan of the sport, as a fan of the game, both college basketball and football, to see these conferences, the ACC, the Big Ten, and the Pac-12 come together and say that, hey, we're going to have scheduling, intercollegiate, interconference scheduling more frequent, more often. It's going to make it exciting. It's going to boost people's playoff resumes. It's going to boost your NCAA tournament resume. And we're gonna get rid of the term NCAA. We're just gonna call it March Madness. It's gonna boost your March Madness resume because that's next. Here's my thing. Obviously, these things are gonna happen overnight. They're gonna take years for it to happen. But what's gonna happen? The following sequence of events are gonna take place. This alliance comes true. So they're going to start scheduling each other, playing some of that stuff. Is going to be really exciting. The next is going to be the dissolvement of the Big 12 conference. Their other schools are going to be absorbed by the Pac-12, ACC, and the Big 10. Potentially the SEC. I'm not so sure. Everybody's kind of like throwing up the middle fingers to the SEC right now because they're pissed off what they did and they're trying to make sure they don't do it to them. So possibly the SEC. I don't out of that list of schools, I don't really see a school that fits the SEC for real. Maybe TCU. Maybe Baylor. I don't know. I feel like they would fit better over out west with some of those West schools, or maybe even really the Big Ten schools right there in the Midwest. So, but maybe Baylor. That's really like the only one. So the Big 12 is going to dissolve, and then next, people are going to be calling for the dissolvement of the NCAA. Mark Emmert, your days are numbered, buddy. Mark Emmert, your days are numbered. Start figuring out retirement, your 401k, getting all that together because your days are numbered. Because I think the NCAA is going to dissolve because we don't need you anymore. We don't need you anymore. We do not. These schools have figured out that, as long as I can negotiate my TV contract with ESPN, with Turner, with Fox, with whoever, ABC, NBC, whoever, as long as I can get a big time TV negotiation, TV deal, I'm going to do that. I ain't worried about y'all punishing my student athletes anymore. Withholding them from games, withholding them from seasons, declaring them ineligible. Now forget all of that. We'll take that over. And that's what I think is going to happen next. Leave your thoughts in the chat. Leave your thoughts in the comments. Once again, I'm Jeff Lightsy Jr. with the Black Boss Channel. Do you believe the Big 12 Conference is going to dissolve? Do you think the NCAA is going to dissolve? I believe so. What do you think? Let me know in the chat. Let me know in the comments. Once again, I'm Jeff Lightsy Jr. with the Black Boss Channel and Victory Formation. Thank you guys for tuning in, and I will see you next time. Peace.